Yep. Yeah. What's up? What's up? What is going on, everybody? This is the May 3rd, 2020 episode of the Boxing Source Radio Show. I am your host, James Bell, lead boxing analyst for the Cold Hard Truth on Sports and also the leader of the Boxing Source on social media. You could catch boxing articles on the boxingsource.net. You can also follow the Boxing Source on Twitter at Boxing Source 2. You can also go to Facebook and look up the Boxing Source and follow us there. We're also on Instagram at the Boxing Source. And you can also subscribe to the YouTube channel, which currently is simulcasting this live podcast. Number to dial in is 347-237-5539. Once again, 347-237-5539. Press the one key to get on cue. You'll be able to talk live on the show. We're going to have a fairly packed podcast here as we're going to have a special guest scheduled for 8 p.m. Eastern time. And also we have like one kind of hot topic that has been going about for the past week and a half, maybe more, in reference to a well-known fighter. But as far as like right now, what I wanted to go over is that, this weekend usually is a big weekend in the sport of boxing. It's kind of like been like that for a good amount of years. We know it as Cinco de Mayo weekend, and around this time is usually a big boxing event over in Las Vegas. And there have been a lot of things that are kind of like surrounded that event. Whether it's something for, Oscar De La Hoya or, now with Canelo Alvarez. But there also was the instance with Floyd Mayweather Jr. Fighting around that weekend. Around 5 years ago to the day, we had Floyd Mayweather Jr. versus Manny Pacquiao over at the MGM Grand Garden Arena. And that particular fight was, billed as the biggest fight in pretty much the past 25 years or so. We all know, what happened with that particular fight. And after that fight, that was when we fairly had our first test run of this particular podcast. So around this time in 2015, that's when the Boxing Source radio show basically started. So it's going on 5 years that we have done this particular podcast. So that is, something I've, kind of like thought about here in the past couple of days, but I will have some time to reflect on it, but I'll focus on that a little bit more on next week's podcast, as I may have a couple things planned for that particular podcast as far as like a, reflection type of show for that. So that's going to be, in the plans for next week. But also we'll see if we'll have another guest scheduled for next week as well. But as far as like this particular week is concerned, and when you talk about the sport of boxing and how this weekend usually has all eyes on Las Vegas. And, last year we had, Canelo Alvarez going up against Daniel Jacobs. With him getting a decision win around that time frame. And, now, with the whole thing with the COVID-19, that has, basically nixed the fight that was scheduled between Saul Canelo Alvarez and Billy Joe Saunders for the WBO Super Middleweight Championship. So we were, slated to have that fight. That was a fight that I kind of was looking forward to seeing, because it would be something to where I would see Canelo Alvarez going up against Billy Joe Saunders. Billy Joe Saunders having the skill set that he has, the defensive skill set that he has, combined with fairly effective offense. So I would have liked to seen how that would have turned out in this particular bout. You would have had Canelo Alvarez there at around 5'8", around a 70 inch wingspan, going up against Billy Joe Saunders, who Billy Joe Saunders is there as the he would come in there with as a taller guy at 5'11", most likely will have the longer reach, and you'd see how we would probably be seeing how that particular fight would turn out, especially if there's an instance where Billy Joe Saunders is able to effectively counter what Canelo Alvarez would be doing in the ring. But also with Canelo Alvarez being a very good offensive fighter, we would also see what Billy Joe Saunders may have been able to do in that particular instance. So that is one thing that we are going to pretty much miss out on, as that fight has basically been nixed, and we're going to have in the future that's planned September 12th, Canelo Alvarez versus Gennady Golovkin, and that will be the third fight between Canelo Alvarez and Gennady Golovkin. So going to basically look ahead to that for the time being. As far as I'm concerned, with Billy Joe Saunders now, with this fight being next, should be something to see what happens when things pick up. Because one, you're going to have the instance where these guys are itching at the bit to be in the ring and to fight, but with the way that things are kind of like set for how events are being done, it may be a little bit of a time before you have fights of that magnitude actually taking place, because you'll need the crowd, the ample crowd available in order to get the revenue that they want for those fights. Canelo fights generate a good amount of revenue at the gate. They get stuff from their subscribers from the zone, and also with pay-per-view orders that are outside of the U.S. There. So you would have had the money from the DAZN subscriptions for that particular fight, and you would have had the pay-per-view orders or the pay-per-view buys that that would have came out from the UK and abroad for that fight between Canelo Alvarez and Billy Joe Saunders. But now, since that fight is now scrapped, that revenue is basically out the window. And now we have to see if that fight will be pushed back to a later date, as with Canelo Alvarez, you had the plan of him fighting Billy Joe Saunders around this time. Then in September, fighting Gennady Golovkin. And then after that, the plan was to fight Ryota Murata before the end of the year. So that's what we got in reference to that with Canelo Alvarez and Billy Joe Saunders. And you also, had a couple of events that are tied into that fight week. You had the Box Fan Expo that's usually taking place around that time in Las Vegas. So you would have had a lot of boxing legends and current boxers out there that would have been over in Las Vegas to be part of that, basically the hoopla around that particular weekend. So, one of the biggest boxing weekends has basically been nixed, because of the current situation, around the world. But when it comes to Canelo Alvarez, this is basically the second time within the 2-year time span that there has not been an event on Cinco de Mayo weekend over in Las Vegas. We all know what happened back in that 2018 thing where he had the whole little thing with the Mexican meat and stuff like that. But that kind of fell through with the initial fight that he was supposed to have with Gennady Golovkin at that time, and then it got rescheduled to September of that year with Canelo Alvarez getting the decision win at that particular instance. But now here, with the whole thing that's going on, you can't really have fights of that magnitude taking place right about now. We had the whole thing that went down in Alexis Arguello gym on the previous weekend, but when it comes to trying to get revenue, you can't necessarily hold a fight of that magnitude around this particular time. So that's what we have as the current situation right now, as that fight is basically fell through, and we have to see what is next in store for Canelo Alvarez, and then also for Billy Joe Saunders. We know the whole thing that went down with Billy Joe Saunders recently, as far as like his comments that he had on social media, and that was something that I've taken the time to speak about on this podcast, and then also on the YouTube channel. So that is one thing that's I've talked about and kind of like pretty much laid to rest, so to speak, there. So that's what we have in reference to that particular news. So one other thing that I wanted to like kind of touch on before we try to get our guests on, it seems like Adam Kownacki looks like he wants to get revenge on his only loss that he's had in his pro career. That was, over at the Barclays Center on March 7th, where he took on Robert Helenius, and Robert Helenius was able to get the win and stop Adam Kownacki in front of the crowd at Barclays Center. That was pretty much the last large crowd that was in the New York City area for a boxing event before the whole thing with the lockdown and stuff like that. They were supposed to have 2 events scheduled under Top Rank Boxing involving Shakur Stevenson in one event and Mick Holland in another event, but they canceled all of that, and we haven't had a live boxing event in America since then. But with Adam Kownacki, he says that he's viewing his last fight, and he says like your whole career is based on the last fight. That he told Ray Flores in the Instagram live that they had recently had. He says that he just has to come back stronger and move past the last fight. Now he also is trying to see if he could get himself in a position to fight Andy Ruiz Jr., the former unified heavyweight champion of the world. And that would be an interesting matchup, to say the least, between those two guys that if they would be, able to get those two guys together on that. But with Kalnacki and how he fights, uh, I really saw something in that particular fight against Robert Helenius, and that is, what would happen if Adam Kalnacki ran into somebody that had power, real power behind their punch. As a lot of the guys that he faced, the likes of um, Charles Martin. He had this fight with Charles Martin. He had his fight with Gerald Washington. He had his fight with Chris Arreola. And many of those, good number of those fighters that he did face didn't really have much behind their punches. So, with that being said, it was, kind of interesting to see how, Robert Helenius was able to stand in there with Adam Kalnacki and then hit him with, a good right hand that put him down, that didn't get counted. But then he was able to knock him down in that round 4, and then eventually stop Adam Kalnacki to get that TKO victory. But when Kalnacki fought, Szpilka, he fought Artur Szpilka, he fought what else did he have over in the Barclays Center? He had that fight against Jesse Barboza, and he was actually there. And I forgot about this one. He was there in that fight against Danny Kelly in the same card where Charles Martin won the IBF title and Deontay Wilder retained the WBC title over Artur Szpilka. So he had been, within that Brooklyn area, fighting in that Brooklyn area for, it's been at least 4 years plus 5 years. So that had basically been his home to, have his fights and, build his following there with the Polish community over in the New York City area and over in New Jersey too. And then over in that fight, the latest fight at the Barclays Center, he just wasn't able to take the punch from Robert Helenius. And so that's going to be a concern for Adam Kalnacki from this point forward, is if he's going to be able to take a punch, because he doesn't really move his head at all. He just throws punches and just comes forward and throws punches and keeps coming at you. But if you're able to throw something back at him and it's something that could sting him, he in trouble. He in real trouble. So as far as like him wanting a rematch with Robert Helenius, that's one thing. But if he really can't get himself to either block punches or, do something to dodge punches that are coming at him, he's going to have a problem with those guys that, really want to focus on throwing the right hand against them. And so I see here in this particular instance that as long as Robert Helenius had that confidence behind the right hand and that it could hurt Adam Kalnacki, that's how he was able to get the knockdown and get the stoppage in round 4. And I think, it was pretty much a action-packed fight for those last couple of rounds there before the stoppage. And, that's what Adam Kalnacki kind of does in his fights. But there's got to be in one particular instance where, he's going to have to adjust his game a little bit in order to fare better against some of these guys, because if he doesn't, then he's going to be in a lot of trouble against some of these heavyweights. So that's what, I got in reference to, that particular topic there with Adam Kalnacki, and kind of like seeing what would, potentially happen with that later on down the line. Now, there is something in reference to Dylan White potentially saying that he would be open to fighting behind closed doors in this current position. Um, he says, like, he said he would do it behind closed doors or in the car park as far as like fighting or going into a boxing match. Now he, was slated to fight Alexander Povetkin around this same time or the same weekend. But we have the whole thing with all of these events being canceled. So um, that has the thing to where we have to see when they're going to actually schedule his fight between him and Alexander Povetkin, which is a fairly intriguing heavyweight fight at this particular juncture. We did talk about him possibly fighting Andy Ruiz Jr., but we went through that whole thing, and Eddie Hearn kind of broke that down over at IFL TV interview. So that fight, wasn't going to be in the cards, and now we have plans for, Dylan White, and it seems like we have plans for Andy Ruiz Jr. as well. But with Dylan White, he kind of hopes that things will get back into a gear in July, as kind of like a few things have started to open up and get more of the general public out and about after this whole thing has gone through. But still people are kind of precautious as to when they're going out, how long they're going out, and things like that. So with that being said, and how we're having more live events that are trying to happen across the world, around the world, then maybe we'll see more things get back into a gear within the next 4 weeks or so, depending on how certain governments and things like that handle large scale events or live events there. So with Dylan White saying that he's open to fighting anywhere, anytime, any place, but when it comes to fights of the magnitude like against Alexander Povetkin, which could have been, what was it, at the O2 Arena, if I'm not mistaken, that would have generated some good revenue for that particular fight as well. So as far as like him fighting Alexander Povetkin in a closed circuit or with no fans, I'm not sure about all of that. So that's going to be pretty much on the table for the time being, until we see what happens. We kind of like said that. I think Eddie Hearn said that they will return in July with a couple of small events, and then want to get some of the big events away. And with the whole thing as far as like the travel restrictions are concerned, you would be having more local fights happening. In his case, or with Matchroom Boxing's case, you're talking about fights over in the UK. It would involve UK fighters and matching up UK fighters there, but also that could happen, over in the US as well. Try to have those fighters that have, or trying to be active or stay active, see if they could be put into a fight here in the US as well. Now, as far as like, traveling and that type of stuff, you got to be able to get through all of that first to make those fights happen and make sure that, everything is permitted to go through with that. But once that does happen, then you will be able to have what you want as far as like some fights are concerned. Did talk about it at one point in a live video a couple of days ago, in that you have an opportunity to try to get some of the smaller fighters that are looking for opportunities to get in the ring and showcase their skills in the ring. This is the time to do so. I mean, if you have this overall demand for live content, in that that you don't have the ability to have the big fights happen as far as like I said, the Dylan White versus Alexander Povetkin, the um, Anthony Joshua versus Kubrat Pulev, the Deontay Wilder versus Tyson Fury. Even though like both of those fighters are still based in the U.S. right now, you can't have those fights to that magnitude because of the amount of interest that it would take or that it would have. So you would have, the live gate that you would lose if you would try to do something like that right now. So if you're not going to try, if you don't want to lose that live gate, then okay, you can push those events much later this year. But as for this time right now or for the next 4 to 8 weeks, see if you can have some of these local fighters or local um, venues be able to have these type of fights if they get the permission to do so, because what happens over in one state here in the U.S. is completely different than what happens in another state. You could have something happen over in Florida. That doesn't mean that it's the same case over in Maryland or in Michigan or in Oklahoma or something like that. Maybe you could have those fights in North Dakota or something. Who knows? But you would probably have to have people driving over to North Dakota or something like that in order for fights like that to take place, maybe. So that's what we have, going on for the time being is that you have to see what goes down as far as like how are these fights going to be arranged once things start to slowly get back to, I wouldn't say normal, but back to at least a level that you would have some events going on to where, people will be able to watch first on, TV, whatever it is, and also events that people will be able to attend. You can't necessarily have it to the point where, we had like, what was it last month? WrestleMania, where they were able to conduct all of their matches over in pretty much one small venue, and with the exception of this certain match that happened that a lot of people were talking about. But other than that, they were able to hold all of their matches in that one particular arena or sporting venue. But then, after that, you still have to see if they'll be able to get something to the point where they'll be able to have fans in the stands, kind of like the level of what we were talking about last week, where, over in Nicaragua, they had their fights that did happen to the point where they had, who was it, like, I think it was like about 1,000 or 2,000 people in there watching the fight or something like that. But, they still had like a few fights that went down before they kind of just said, all right, we're going to just have these few fights. And then once, things are a little bit safer, then we'll start having a little bit more fights on the fight cards and things like that. So that's kind of like how this thing is being basically handled out there. For those that are, listening in live, you could also call in to talk boxing at 347-237-5539. That's 347-237-5539. Press the one key to get on queue, and you'll be able to talk live on the show. We're going to see if we could have our guests to call in here in a moment. And then once they do call in, and we'll be able to go forward with our our interview there. So That's pretty much what we're waiting on, seeing if they will be able to call in. And once they do call in, then we'll be able to handle your interview here. This is, one thing that I wanted to get in because kind of saw, a comment from this person that kind of struck some interest out there. And one of my good friends that has been, one of the biggest contributors to this podcast over the course of the 5 years that it has been in existence. They have been able to, get me to connect with a lot of the fighters that I do conduct interviews with on this particular podcast. So he reached out to me to see if I could get in contact with this particular person. So, with that being said, I'm going to see if they are available here at this particular juncture. So let me see if I can have them on here in just a moment. So seems like they are on here right now. This is our guest, and before I put them on, just like to give a small little bio. She is coming from the Pittsburgh area. She has a 113 amateur record. Just now going into the process of turning pro. Four-time national champion there, and that is Miss Tika Hemingway. Tika, how are you doing this evening? I'm doing good, sis. I'm doing good. Glad to have you on the show here. Just wanted to, talk about a few things. See that you had just signed to, be part of the pro ranks. So if you can, just go into that a little bit.
Oh yeah, so definitely. I'm a elite amateur coming out of amateur. I did have a record of 113, four-time national champion. I just turned pro. I started a good contract with Split T. And I have a manager, Brian Cohen, and I'm basically just here, in the pros now, and I'm just like ready to just, make my mark, let people know who I am, and to just take these titles and take these belts and take these names.
Gotcha. Basically. Now, seeing that you had that extensive record in the amateurs, seeing that you were four-time national champion, had competed in the Olympic trials, so you have been involved with fights with a lot of notable fighters that are out there that are currently pros right now. I've gone into some of them as like Franchon Cruz-Dezurn is one, Raquel Miller is another, and Claressa Shields is another. So that was, a very deep and talented class that was part of that. That was part of that amateur team.
Yeah, it was. We actually had the 18. We had that was like that Chicago Bulls era. That small few years that we all, were boxing. That was the Chicago Bulls era. But I beat. Well, I didn't get the decision against Claressa Shields, but we'll get into that later.
Mm-hmm.
But I beat Franchon Cruz numerous times in amateurs. I beat Raquel Miller numerous times in amateurs. So it's like basically everyone right now who has a belt, I beat them. So I'm just ready. I'm just ready. I'm in 2012, so let me give you a little bit more of like a background history.
Mm-hmm.
And like to to give you a little bit of understanding of like why me turning pro is so historic and momentous. Okay, so in 2012, I fought Claressa Shields in the finals in Olympic trials. All right, and then you know she got the decision and she went off to Olympics in 2012. Then in 2016, same thing. Me and her fought in the finals in Olympic trials. They gave her the decision, and she went off to Olympics again. So, and then in 2020, I stayed around to only go to the Olympics because Claressa was gone, and you know it was my time.
Right.
So I fought in the Olympic trial qualifiers, and I won. And then at night, in the middle of the night, we got a phone call from USA Boxing, Mike McAtee, the whole 9 yards, and they overturned my fight. So,
wow.
So that's crazy. So basically, it prevented me from going to Olympic Games. But if you think about it, I mean, it's a blessing in disguise because of the coronavirus is going on right now. I will have to wait another year for the Olympics. And also, they just set me up with $1 million storyline going into the pros. So thank you, USA Boxing.
Yeah. So there you go. Yeah, I feel you there.
So basically, y'all just set me up with another storyline. Like the top grossing female boxer is Claressa Shields. In 2012, I fought her in Olympic trial qualifiers. Blah blah. 16, same thing. Then this happened in 2020. So basically, y'all just set me up for the money. The money fight. Y'all don't even know it. So everything happens for a reason. Yeah.
Now, I was gonna, go into, that a little bit later. I think that like I had pulled up. Let me see what these results was. This is kind of this is like in 2015. Where I got into the thing where you defeated the likes of Franchon Cruz and Raquel Miller up in the Olympic trials that and then you had the a fight with Claressa Shields there. So like I said, I mean you have Franchon Cruz that's won world titles at super middleweight. You have Raquel Miller, who I've actually had on the podcast earlier. That's going to be competing for a world title later on down the line, and now it's your turn going into the pros to be like say that, hey, this is my time. I'm ready right now, so it's my time.
And the thing is, you want to know something? Like, it's weird because I've been being nice. I swear I've been being nice. Like, I stayed around for the Olympics because I felt like, I'm the best athlete, and I still am the best athlete for that position at the time. But, they overturned my fight, which you know what they did to me. You know that doesn't happen.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? They overturned my fight in the middle of the night. I'm getting ready for my next fight the next day.
Yeah.
Chilling in bed, thinking about what I'm going to do to this girl. And we get phone calls left and right. So, but I forgot what I was saying. You messed me up.
No, as far as like I guess with that kind of like being motivation, like you said, of going pro.
You know what? So I had to turn pro after that because that was recent. They make the Olympic team, so basically what happens after that? Turn pro. And I'm done with y'all because y'all return my fight. I'll never fight amateur again. I'm turned off from the amateur program.
Mm-hmm.
So, turn pro. And I was being nice because, like, Franchon, it's like I know these women, and they're some of them are my friends.
Mm-hmm.
So I wanted her to keep their belts a little bit longer before I turned pro. I know that's weird, but I didn't want to take their belts off of them so soon.
Well, the thing with Franchon, that was kind of a little bit of a situation there, and she did get one of those belts back, but there's some guy by the name of Mauricio Suleiman that's kind of tripping about that other belt. But that's a whole another story right there. I'm gonna see if I got like a caller in here from the 646. He is known as the president of the Deontay Wilder fan club, Mr. Matthew Brown. You're here with Chica Hemingway on the Boxing Source radio show.
Hey. I'm good.
I just wanted to ask. I was listening to your words. You're very eloquent in talking about how you're entering the sport of boxing and the stuff that happened with you during the two Olympic trials. But I'm actually curious as to one of the things you said. You said that they gave Claressa Shields a decision against you in the Olympic trial finals. Like the way you said it made it seem like you felt like you kind of deserved the decision. Is that like an accurate depiction on what you were trying to say?
100%. Yeah. Yep. 100%. There have been many times where I fought Claressa and they've given her the decision in the amateurs. And, like, I'm one of those deep type of people, and I've always known that they clearly robbed me when they did give her the decision. But this last time around, when they, in the middle of the night, overturned my fight, where y'all just blatantly, just blatantly robbed me, then that's when I just knew. You know what I mean? Like, they've been robbing me for years. So, but it's okay because it's giving me the fire, it's giving me the motivation, and it's giving me like the amazing storyline, and my fans love me and are sticking with me, and they just want to see me win. So, I mean, I'm very optimistic, and everything happens for a reason. And I'm kind of happy with what happened because it set me up for a greater comeback, which is going to happen later.
Wow. What's the?
But yeah, I was definitely robbed. If you're asking me, was I robbed? Yes, I was robbed.
Well, what's the game plan out of the gate now that you turned pro? Do you have anyone that you're looking to fight to start your career off with a bang?
Basically, we have a plan. We're just going to just execute the plan. I just want you to kind of follow me and kind of just follow me and watch the journey, because I don't want to tell too much of the plan. Mm-hmm. But if you just watch, you'll see it unravel, and you'll know that it was amazing. I'm going to be a champion. You'll see. Everybody will see it. The world will see it.
Gotcha. Now, before I kind of go into this comment that I did see a couple days ago, there's a couple of things that I usually ask our guests that come on the show. One of them is what or who motivated you the most to get into boxing?
Nobody. It wasn't like a boxer. It was my first coach. His name was Sheldon Stoudemire. He was a minister. He was a street minister. So whenever I met him, and I got under his tutelage, he taught me how to box, and he taught me everything he knew about boxing. And I won my first nationals with 5 fights. My first national championship with 5 fights, and then I got on Team USA, and I've been, traveling the world ever since because of him putting the work in and the time and with me, when I was 17, making all the sacrifices for me. So, right. Sheldon Stoudemire, he's dead now. He just died this year. Man. He was murdered. He was assassinated at work. It was crazy.
Man, jeez. Wow.
Yep, it was crazy. It was all over the news. He was in a homeless shelter. A man tried to get in at 3 o'clock in the morning. He told the guy that he'll help him, but he has to come back at 7 o'clock when they open, blah, blah, blah. And the guy shot through the door and killed him. So, yeah. So that's my first coach. That's my motivation. That's the person who got me started in boxing. Mm-hmm. That's the person who, showed me the sport, made me fall in love. So he's gone. He just died. I know he's watching over me. I got the best coaches in the world. I got my guardian angel up in heaven. You know what I mean? I have everything it takes.
I feel you.
Whatever I want.
And you know, not.
And I don't know if you see what I look like. Did you see the do you know what I look like? I'm kind of cute too.
Yeah, I got one of these pictures. I'm gonna, you know what? I'm gonna send it to Matt. I'm gonna send it to him. I'm gonna send it to him.
Yeah, cute too. So like people know. So you see, this is what's going on. I'm a secret. I'm a secret in boxing. I'm a secret in women's boxing. That's about to be told. You know what I mean? So that's what's going on. Like that's what you feel in the air right now.
Gotcha. Let me see if I have another caller in here from the 813 area code. You're on with Tika Hemingway on the Boxing Source Radio Show.
Hey, what's up, Tika? This is Terrell Holmes from Tampa, and I already hear my man Matt on the phone. So Tika, my name is Terrell, and not Terrell.
Come on, don't say that, man. Don't say that.
See? Here we go.
But now, real quick, just once again, glad to be on the show. Glad to be introduced to the world of Tika. Anyway, just jump on your Twitter, look at your Instagram.
Oh no, my Twitter sucks too.
Yeah, it does.
I favor Facebook.
But yeah, just once again, glad to be introduced to your world in terms of boxing. Seeing some of your training regimens. Glad that you're dedicating your body to the sport. That's always good to see. In some cases, you have people getting extremely outweight outside of fights, but once again, you're dedicated to your grip. I can definitely see that. Just want to get to know you right now. But glad to meet you.
Oh, nice to meet you too. Yeah, follow me on like Facebook. Cause like I'm popping on Facebook and then blah blah. I gotta get everything else together, but it'll get there.
Yeah, I'll link them to your Facebook page, because since you said your Twitter ain't hitting right now. So since your Twitter ain't hitting right now,
my Twitter is the worst.
We'll
My Twitter is the worst. My Instagram is worse after that. But Facebook's cool. Facebook's good.
Yeah, well, since you're turning pro, we could see if we could link you with a good PR team, so that we have all of those social media accounts on cracking right now, so that the Instagram and the Twitter could catch up with Facebook or something. You know what I mean? Oh, me. I mean, I can't necessarily do all of that, because I probably could, but we'll probably see if we can talk about that.
Yeah, my team, they want my social media, so they want it all. So I'm just gonna I think you just gave me the motivation to relinquish control and let them take care of it. But they want my Twitter, they want my Instagram. And there's another one, but they like how I do my Facebook, but they want all that.
Well, I mean, the Facebook, you could, handle that, on your own, because that's pretty much like more of your personal page, until you could have like some other page that could be done.
Yeah.
But like with Instagram and Twitter, you could, have your, that could be used for promotion. You know what I mean? So they could, try to go that way.
They want that.
Yeah.
They keep on asking me, like, look, give me your password. I keep on saying that. But I'm going to give it to them tonight. And you guys want to, call me out and everything.
So
that's good. I'm glad you guys did on that.
I mean, you only got like 2 Twitter posts, one from like 2015. I was like, does this girl really exist?
No,
But look, go on Facebook though. You'll see. And then when you see my face in my inbox.
Yeah.
Hey, real quick, you know what? There's a thing called boxing Twitter. That's a whole big world there for exposure as well. So please take advantage of that. Definitely.
Boxing Twitter.
Well, it's just a little small scope of Twitter. I mean, it's Twitter, but it's a big boxing world.
Yeah.
People on it.
I'm gonna get it hooked up.
Mm-hmm.
Give me like a week and I'll be good.
Yep. Now, my other question that I usually ask is, going into books. So, is there like any book that you, kind of like reference or like to read?
Any book?
Yes.
You know what? Yeah, I'm reading something right now, but it's not like anything that I would want to reference or anything.
Mm-hmm.
It's this book from Paulo Coelho. He's a British author. No, not British. He's an author from Brazil, I think. And it's called From the River of Piedra I Sat Down and Wept. And that's the book I'm reading right now. So it's like really philosophical, and it's about like life and like things that you go through in life and the lessons that you learn and stuff like that. So I'm into like philosophical and like books that like teach you and mold you.
Mm-hmm. Gotcha. So it's by the River Piedra I Sat Down and Wept by Paulo Coelho.
No, I'm not promoting that book. I'm gonna promote the Bible. That's what I'm
Okay.
promote that. What my mom called me, right? My mom called me last night. And she called me, she just said crazy stuff sometimes, and then she'll just be done. She'll say that. And I think it's weird, but when I think about it, I'm like, that was profound. So last night, I was reaching out to these sponsors and blah blah blah, and I'm getting major hits. On the amount of money that I wanted and blah blah. Business stuff. So I was sitting there and I was talking to myself, and I was like, you know what? I should have been reached out to these people, but I was always scared. I was always fearful. I didn't, think that I would get what I wanted out of them, and I was always scared. Like fear, motivated me. Like fear was like big outside of boxing or whatever for me. So I didn't do a lot of things I needed to do. So anyway, I'm getting what I want to get right now, and all I'm doing is just asking for it. So I was sitting there reflecting on, I should have did this a long time ago. So she called me and she said one thing, and my family calls me Tiki. She said, Tiki, I just want to tell you this, and I don't know why, but she said he has not because he has not. That's what she said to me. That's all. He has not because he has not. And she hung up. Like she basically said, I'll talk to you later. I hung up. And then I reflected more and I was like, you know what, man, like that's true. Like a lot of people really want stuff in life and they put the work in, blah blah, but don't be asking for it. You don't ask for it. Like you gotta ask. Like you have a relationship with God, you gotta ask for what you want and put the work in. And I don't promote books or anything, but I'll promote that bit of positivity and just advice. Like you gotta ask for what you want. The closed mouth don't get fed in business,
right?
In life, spirituality, in boxing. You know what I mean? You gotta get out there, right?
Yep. Yeah.
The closed mouth don't get fed. So.
Yep. You gotta go out there and get it. You can't just wait for it because it won't be given to you.
You ain't talking about stuff. You ain't saying something in there. Blah, blah, blah.
Right.
So that just motivated me even more. And it gave somebody like me confirmation that it's over. It's over. It's over. Right. I put the work in and I keep on making good work. Can't nobody touch me. Because you already damn sure can't touch me in the ring. So, and in life, you know what I mean? I'm a good person outside. I'm a badass in the ring. So, it's going to be crazy whenever this coronavirus is up. They better have a freaking, they looking for a tour for the coronavirus. They need to be looking for a tour for Tika Hemingway.
Oh, I was going to go into...
I got a question for her, JR.
Oh, go ahead.
If you don't mind me asking.
Go ahead.
I noticed that you were one of the key sparring partners for Ivana Hasteen going into her fight with Claressa Shields in January. What was it like being in the camp? And do you have any insight as to what was the game plan that you brought to the camp to, try to attempt to give Claressa her first professional loss?
Okay. All right. So the game plan what I brought to the camp was, all right. So let me paint the picture a little bit for you. So in Croatia, all right. So in America, there's all different types of people, right? All different types. So in Croatia, there's only white people, and you don't see any black people at all. So it's just that, and it's just like, so I brought Claressa. I brought basically Claressa. I brought swag. I brought speed. I brought freaking dog. I brought freaking just gutterness. I brought skill to the camp. I brought knowledge of who she was fighting. I fought Claressa numerous times, so I had knowledge, and I was able to, help her coaches make the adjustments on certain things, and to give them advice on what they should and should not do. So, it was very beneficial to, the camp of Habazan camp. They never. A lot of these European fighters, they don't see fighters like us in America. So a lot of these superstar athletes that are from other countries should still be amateur in America, if you know what I mean. That's all
Yeah.
That's all I'm saying. But yeah. So I just brought this knowledge, skill. I brought Philly to Croatia, but I'm from Pittsburgh.
So I have a question for you on that thing that goes to you. So once you were probably going to camp, do they want you to fight or some way to expect for you to fight exactly like the opponent? Or do they even go as far as to tell you they want you to fight left-handed or orthodox or whatever, or just show that certain style instead of just being yourself? Because obviously, while you may be able to have that passion that Claressa Shields may have, you're not her. So once again, do they tell you to fight exactly like her? Do they go that far?
Yeah, because what don't I have, and what superiority that she has? Claressa's fast. I'm fast. I'm fast too. I'm strong. Like, I'm a dog. She's a dog. You know what I mean? Like, so what superiority does she have that someone else doesn't bring? You know what I mean? Like, I brought the same thing that she has. Like, I'm the closest thing to. I'm the only person that will beat Claressa Shields. Can't nobody fucking beat Claressa Shields. Savannah Marshall cannot beat Claressa Shields. This is why Savannah Marshall can't beat Claressa Shields. Because I'm an elite athlete. They kept us so separate that they kept us so close. USA Boxing. I was in camp all the time with all the elite females in the world. They kept us together. People don't know this, but they kept me together. They kept me, Claressa, Savannah Marshall, and a few other fighters all together. We all trained together. Savannah Marshall only had a heart. She don't have the heart to beat Claressa Shields. That was a one and done thing. She don't have a heart. They'll fight. Claressa will beat her. Savannah will look dumb, and everybody like, oh my God, that's not the one that y'all want. Y'all want to see it, but it's not going to happen. As far as it's not going to be the result that y'all think, because Savannah Marshall does not have the heart. She's scared. She's too scared. She's way scary.
Yeah, looks like they bring her along real slow in the program right now. You know,
what did I just say? What did I just say? I don't even know why. I don't even know why they doing that. They doing that because I know why. Like these girls are like, we grew up together. That's why we're so passionate. Like when I talk about another fighter, it's say if I fight, Joanne McHale from North Carolina. Everything's gonna be good. I'm a beater, and it's gonna be no bad blood. It's gonna be good sportsmanship. With Claressa, some of these other fighters, we were raised together in USA boxing. People don't know that. But Savannah Marshall, she don't have heart. She don't have heart. She won't beat Claressa. I saw it. With my own ass. That was a one and done thing. Will never happen again.
Now, in reference,
I'm going to be the one that's going to be there.
Yeah. Speaking of that, you did say last week that you will beat the blank out of Claressa Shields in the pros, and that you have way more power than Claressa, and that you will knock her out. That's what it's saying.
I think it's our dragon too, right?
Oh well, yeah. You say you'll drag her. Yeah. You said that you'll drag her. Yep, that's what you said. That is what you said.
This is what I said I'll drag her, and this is what I said. People are scared. People are not trying to open up their mouths. Like, y'all let this girl freaking come in on y'all and just bully all of y'all. She just took freaking 3-4 people's titles, different weight classes, just dogging all of y'all. Talking all types of stuff, freaking just making all of y'all cry, just bullying y'all. Ain't nobody saying nothing. So y'all all that scared. So what do you do to a bully? You punch him in the fucking mouth. That's what you do. And that's what I'm going to do to her. And the pros, they're not going to protect her. In the amateur, she was protected. I'll win, clearly. And, you know what I mean? Boom. Claressa Shields is the winner. You know what I mean? Like, I just want everybody to know that, I just want her to know that when we fight, it's when we fight. That's all. Like, and I want people to get interested. Now, like, that's the money fight. It's not Layla. It's not Savannah. Savannah don't have the heart. Layla really don't know fight. She's acting.
And a couple weeks ago,
we all know, but we all acting like we don't know.
Yeah, because I had Raquel Miller on a few weeks ago, and she also wanted that smoke with Claressa Shields and the pros too. So it's gonna be pretty much a race to get out of. And I know that this is not good for a specific caller that's on right now, because not only is that person the president of the Deontay Wilder fan club, but apparently this person is the president of the Claressa Shields fan club. So apparently he does not like Claressa Shields slander on this podcast. I don't know why. I'm just here to cover the sport of boxing.
No, that's cool. That's great. So you're the president. So you're the president of Claressa Shields, whatever her name is, fan club, right?
Yeah.
So you probably been following, me and her back and forth on Facebook, blah blah. Within the past week or whatever, right?
Mm-hmm.
Right? Did you see that video that she posted? You did?
I saw it.
Okay, so you saw the video.
Yeah.
So you saw the video that she posted. All right. So look, I'm gonna say a few things. I'm done. if I want to show my fans something, like my fans, I'm going to show the best part of that, the best part. You put that up? You put that up, girl? What was you playing? You wasn't. We was up and up. We was up and up. And when you was doing your little combos, you was hitting air, honey. Like, what was you doing? So she tried to make it seem like she was so superior. You're not. Superior where? Your body language was good. But I saw that in that your body language. That's it. But other than that, we was up and up, blah, blah, blah. I was team blue. I was in the blue corner. You saw it. So what did you have? What did you think about that? That little round that she put up, Mr. Top Fan.
Listen, I don't like to put two black women against each other. That goes against what I believe in. Okay, I'm a fan of Claressa Shields. There's no doubt about it. But I also want to root for and support up and coming female fighters because I think it's very important that guys like me, guys like JR, guys like Terrell, that we all promote the women's boxing game because honestly, I don't think women get the respect that they deserve in the sport. You know, so I'm not going to speak on the actual video because what's important is that, listen, maybe you got paths on the course in the pros. I think that really depends on your, not just your management and your promotional team. I actually think it depends on you. I think you're gonna have to put yourself out there more to promote yourself because I think going forward, Claressa Shields is only gonna fight. Like if it's not a fight for a title where she can make some type of history, I think it's gonna be a fight with a huge built-in storyline. Now, although I know and you know,
Okay, all right.
The storyline okay. Don't know it.
Exactly. A lot of people don't know. So basically, like what I'm doing right now. I'm basically like trying to just do that. I'm trying to do that. Like our storyline is amazing. 2012 fought in the finals and went to trial. 2016 went to trial. I was a training partner for them. And then 2020, my fight is to return in the night. So that's an amazing storyline. It is gonna happen. The fight is gonna happen. It's just a matter of when, and it don't even matter. Like, in this fight, you don't even have to pick a side. Or, you know what I mean? You just sit there and just watch and just admire, you know?
Yeah.
Well, I can't wait to see more action.
Yeah.
And I'm a sweetheart. Like, I might come off, turned up right now. But, I've been doing, I did, a few interviews today and everything. So, and coronavirus and blah, blah, blah. But once you get to know me and, follow me more, follow my journey, you'll, really, unpeel and you'll really get to see me and really get to see what's up.
Yeah, I think that once that particular fight happens, I think brother Matt will have his eyes covered, with his hands once that first bell rings. Because I don't know if he would want to see it.
No, but I do want to know your thoughts. On that one little round that she played. Like, what are your thoughts?
Honestly, I thought that you both looked good. I didn't think
exactly
that's right because at the end of the day,
she's who she is, and it wasn't that a big of a margin.
Yeah, she's Claressa Shields. So thinking from a casual boxing fan perspective, nobody knows who Tegan Heavyweight is yet, right? But we know who Claressa Shields is. So if Claressa Shields posts a video of you two going at it, I'm expecting to see her wash you, basically. And that's not what we saw in the video. So it did make me
exactly. And guess what? That's the video that she posted. That's the one that she favored. That's the one that she looked the best. The rest of them show otherwise. She throws those little stupid comments, those little fast little machine gun, those little punches or whatever. But when she was doing that, when she does that with me, what do? I use my footwork, I use my movement, and she was punching air. And it just shows that I'm good. And I'm just ready. And I'm just ready. I'm ready to be out here.
But what kind of timeline are you working on to get your first title shot?
What?
Like what kind of timeline are you looking to get your first title shot? Like are you looking to do that like
Yeah, you want to know something? Yeah, we trying to get some ASAP. For be honest, we're trying to get some ASAP. I don't want too many. I don't want to talk too logistics because we definitely have plans, but we're definitely trying to get a title ASAP and then go down and get a title ASAP and then go down and get a title ASAP. So as soon as we start, boxing, so that I have my first fight, we're gonna just hit the ground running and try to stay as busy as possible and stay vigilant as possible. And I mean, I want Claressa. I beat everybody else. I'm gonna beat them all this close, but I want her, and I want Shanley. I beat her many times before. I never got the decision. I want the decision. So that's why this fight is so meaningful, and that's why the fans are all fucking talking about it. I ain't nobody, right? Why am I calling now? Because of somebody. I'm here now.
There it is. Like you said, I mean, you're starting here with split team management, and they'll be able to put you in a position to kind of showcase your skills out there, and once you do have that particular path to fight for a world title, they'll be able to get you ready for that. I'm pretty sure that they'll be able to do that for you.
I'm definitely. Yeah, I know. Split team is definitely amazing. And I have a good manager. This is what I know. So you want to know what I can say? I know because I work hard. I got the skill. The heart is clean. And my attitude is on point. Y'all better keep on watching.
Oh, yep. Yeah, we're definitely gonna have a eye on you, and then once you have your first fight there as a professional, we'll be able to push that out because we're going to be following you on Facebook. We're going to be following you on Facebook until we get the other social media things on point. So we're going to be following you on Facebook. And then we'll work on the other things and get that going. Anyone else have questions here? Anyone else have questions for Sister Tika Hemingway here?
Yeah, I don't know what's the question. What's the question? It's locked out.
Probably I want to eat. I'm going to eat, and I want to drink a good one, like a Mai Tai. I don't care. That's what it is, but once you're locked down, I go back to training.
Right.
So regardless of whatever's going on, I think. So I'll be back in training. So whenever this stuff is open back up, I'll still be in training. Start fighting again. I'll be ready. I'll hit the ground running. I'll be out the ground fighting. You know what I mean? But that's funny. Other restaurants, bomb, go free, feel free, and eat a roll. And like that.
Yep.
That's what I want.
All right, Terrell, you had a question for Sister Tika?
No. Just like you said, we definitely are interested in you wherever you are. I mean, even right now, just gonna jump on Twitter, once you don't just and just share some of your content, just to get your name out to that namespace. But I'm glad to meet you. I'm glad to know there's a dog out there that the world needs to know about that. And that's what we want to do. And like Matt said, we don't want to, in a sense, pit women against women because I'm black we're all black, and we're pro-black. Period.
Yeah,
So
I'm going back to
it's not about creating drama or animosity between black boxers. At the bottom line, I want you guys to also see, and I want to be one of the spectators and fans, and consume a good professional product. So it's not about causing no drama. We're all positive people here. So we can all attest to.
But yeah, no, I don't hear you. But you can look at my Facebook, and I think that this interview earlier, myself later, not on air. Right? I'm just joking.
Okay. Yeah, no, yeah, Terrell. Yeah, Terrell brought up a good point there as far as like, having, all the ones that you have, gone up with in the amateur ranks with. I've kind of like ran through it with Franchon Cruz-Azurn, with Tiara Brown, with Raquel Miller, among others there that, we currently follow there. So, once you turn pro, you're pretty much going to be, part of that same class that came up around that time, 2012 and 2016, that, are going to, have their time as far as like being in the top of the boxing ranks there. And then, like I said, soon enough, you'll be able to fight for and become a world champion.
I believe I'm trying to put the right time to like this is the best time. Like everybody made it good, everybody has belts, everybody made it warm, everybody made it hot. Now they have whoever. That didn't sound right.
Yep.
That didn't sound right at all. but you know what I mean, right?
Yeah. Yep. So, I thank you very much for coming on to this particular podcast, and look forward to having you on in the future. And once we get things going, and you do have that announcement for your first fight, then we'll be sure to get in contact with you so that you'll be able to talk about that fight and promote that fight.
And fix that social media starting tonight.
What you say?
I said fix that social media starting tonight.
Oh my God! I know. I'm giving. You know what? They want her Twitter, and they want it so bad. They contact me every 2 days. They keep asking for my password and stuff. But like, I don't. People be sending messages on it, and I don't know. But I'm gonna give them that. I'll give it away. They can have it. I got that. But I was nice talking to you guys tonight.
Oh, thank you. Because it was 4 hours.
Just be honest, stay safe, stay clean.
Yep.
You already know.
Yep. Stay safe and stay clean, sister.
Text me, call me anytime.
All right, no doubt. And that was Sister Tika Hemingway there. She'll be a pro soon. They're under Split T Management. So, like I said, follow her on Facebook right now, Tika Hemingway. Just look her up on Facebook, Tika Hemingway. Have like about a couple more minutes here on the live telecast. If you want to talk boxing, want to call in at 347-237-5539. Right now, since I have, like I said, the president of the Deontay Wilder fan club and the president of the Claressa Shields fan club on, Mr. Matthew Brown, I think there was something that was on your mind about a specific boxer that has been in the boxing scene over the past few weeks in reference to his supposed reluctance to fight somebody. So could you break that down for us, please?
Let's talk about the most protected big year in boxing, the patron saint of boxing. I'm pretty sure I'm gonna get a lot of blowback for even mentioning his name. Let's talk about Vasily Lomachenko. Okay. Lomachenko allegedly was supposed to fight Teofimo Lopez to unify the 135-pound division. We saw back in December when Mikey Conlan fought Vladimir Nicotina, I think his name was. Lopez, the manager for Lomachenko, who was his Klimax, basically after Conlan rightfully got the decision against his fighter, basically said that Lomachenko is never going to fight in New York because he was upset at the decision. We're not coming back to New York. I'm never letting Lomachenko fight in New York again. Now, we know that a Lomachenko versus Teofimo Lopez fight would make sense nowhere but New York. Lopez is from Brooklyn. Lomachenko has drawn a decent crowd at the theater in Madison Square Garden in New York. So it just makes sense that that fight would be there. Now, he already planned a defeat back in December. We're not fighting there. And it piqued my interest because I'm like, hey, why are you talking about this all of a sudden? Like, Lomachenko has fought in New York before, one decision in New York before, one fight in New York before. Okay, whatever. Put that on the back burner. The fight allegedly is about to be signed, right? What happens to coronavirus? We know what happened. It's a big pandemic. Obviously, you're not going to blame Lomachenko for that. But the news comes out that Lomachenko wants a tune-up fight before he fights Teofimo Lopez. Why the hell would Lomachenko want to take a tune-up fight before he fights Teofimo Lopez? Can anybody explain that?
Well, I would like to go back to like what you were saying in reference to that fight card, which contained Mick Conlan versus Nicotina, and the fight between Teofimo Lopez and Richard Commey as a co-feature to Crawford against Kavaliauskas. And Egis Klimas's comments after that was kind of, suspect because, like you said, Vasily Lomachenko has basically made a semi-home over in Madison Square Garden, having, those couple of events that are out there at MSG. And, he's pulled those good, pretty good crowds there at the theater at Madison Square Garden. So it's like, why in the world would you pull that away when you had actually was he fought, like, since 2016, he fought Roman Martinez, he fought Rigo, he fought Linares, and he fought Pedraza at MSG, and that fight against Linares was, a very good fight there at MSG. And now you want to potentially take that away? That's suspect. And then, like you said, now they want a tune-up fight before fighting Teofimo Lopez. Well, before this whole thing with the COVID-19 or coronavirus was going on, they were supposed to have that fight signed. There was supposed to have been a date locked down for that fight, right? But even before all of this happened in the United States, they didn't have any date set, locked down, reserved for any venue for that particular fight. So it's not like, like, for example, the thing with Jose Ramirez and Victor Postol, like, that fight was signed, sealed, and they had a original date of February 1st, and they had to push it back, and then they had another date for it, and then now it's canceled. But with Lomachenko and Lopez, they never had a date. So if they never had a date, then nobody could wait. No, I'm just kidding. That they really didn't necessarily want to go forward with this fight. And remember, the talk around the boxing circles or the so-called rumor mill was that after Lomachenko had his fight with Teofimo Lopez, win or lose, he was going to go down to 130. So if his plan was to go down to 130, that must mean that he really sees what's going on there at 135 with all of those young guys lurking around there. And they're chomping at the bit to be the first one to kind of get at Lomachenko, because Lomachenko has that name and that pedigree. So they'll be like, oh, I'll be the first one to, hurt and stop Lomachenko. So I don't know if Lomachenko and his team want that to basically happen over there at 135 pounds. That's what I'm thinking. How about you?
I think it's just little bits and pieces of information, but it's starting to add up. We saw the situation with the WBC belt with Devin Haney, Lomachenko, his team. They decided to vacate the title rather than fight Devin Haney. There's no ways about it. You can have the media try to spin it. They can try to say that Devin Haney is not a legitimate champion. They can try to promote whatever they want to promote. The fact of the matter is, Lomachenko's team asked for the franchise designation, so he doesn't have to have the mandatory obligation against Haney, and that's exactly what he got. So it's starting to add up, man. Like, Lomachenko had no problem fighting Luke Campbell.
Yep.
He had no problem fighting the Jose Pedradas of the world, the Jason Sosas of the world, the Mariagas of the world, the Walters. He had no problem doing that. But now, all of a sudden, when you have these young lions that are blue chippers, because make no mistake about it, Haney is a blue chipper, Teofimo Lopez is a blue chipper. Now that you got these blue chippers basically showing this guy no respect, saying, hey, listen, we'll fight you. We don't give a damn. We will fight you. All of a sudden, Lomachenko, I don't know. So I'm not saying nothing, but I'm just saying it's starting to add up.
Question for you.
Yeah.
So I hadn't heard about that part where Lomachenko said he wanted a tune-up. I don't know, was that recently? I'm not sure. But he just went back to when Teofimo beat Richard Comey. At that point, him and his father already had eyes on fighting Lomachenko. And it's kind of funny when you look back at the professional career of Lomachenko, his first coming in, losing to Salido, beating Gary Russell Jr., things like that, and going on to beat a litany of other opponents, right? We know that. And at this point, he said, once you got to 135, his thing was like, I want to unify the division. So look at the landscape of 135 at the point when he first said that. So Lomachenko, Teofimo did not have a title belt at that point. He also had a fight where he struggled a bit against one of the opponents back then. I think it was Japanese guy, whatever the guy's name is, something like that.
Nakatani.
Yep.
So at that point, 135 was not what it is today, because today 135 is on the cusp of being the best division in boxing. I mean, we already think about the heavyweight trio. At that point, definitely at this point now with Wilder having Wilder lost, Fury is sitting to the top, and Joshua is where he's at. And we already know all the stories about 147 with Crawford, Danny Garcia, Pacquiao. We know all those things. But at this point, 135 is probably the best division in boxing in terms of the fights, the talents, and the matches that we could possibly get in that regard. So at that point, back then, like the 135, it was okay. It was okay, But now 135 is likely to be the highest spot in boxing. And if Lomachenko truly said that he wanted a tune-up, now that is totally laughable, and you guys already know he don't want that smoke. He does not want that smoke because at this point with the COVID-19 outbreak, everyone is on hiatus. Everyone is on break. So it's up to you to keep yourself in shape. And you look at Lomachenko, and he's not a big 135-pounder. He's not.
Nope.
He can fight at the weight class, but he's not big. So he's not be getting out of shape like that. So what do you need a tune-up fight? So this is the guy where you said you trained for years and years for this opportunity, so many amateur fights, your father trained you in the art of dance, things like that. So you're not going to need a tune-up fight. You're always in shape for the most. You know what I'm saying? So you just need to stay in camp, keep your boxing and skills sharp. So once again, what do you need a tune-up fight for? I mean, aside from that, if that's true, it just doesn't mean they bring the scared. Because I mean, really, we knew about Lopez when he's a prospect of the year a few years back. We know that. But at this guy has exploded onto the scene. And it's a certain force we work with that he's going to be real soon that nobody wants to fight because he's done stuff that if he is to unify 135, he's fighting on the 140 next after that. So, but bottom line, Lomachenko doesn't want that smoke. That's all it is. That's all it is.
Yeah, I mean it's like these sharks are out there in the water and they smell blood, and this like Lomachenko wants to get himself out of that water and get to some other some other body of water or something over in 130 because like you're saying, man, you got Teofimo out there, you got Devin Haney, and the whole thing that Bob Arum arranged with the WBC on that. Now you got Ryan Garcia that's now rolling with Eddie Reynoso there, so we're going to be seeing how he's going to develop as a fighter under the tutelage of Eddie Reynoso. And there's a few other guys that are out there. I mean, you got Tank Davis that's floating around at lightweight or super featherweight, but he has one version of a lightweight title as well. And there's a few other young cats that are out there right now that that want to have that chance to fight Vasyl Lomachenko. So now it's like Lomachenko might want to have like a light touch or something like that, like find I don't know, man, like a who they got here as a contender, like a James Tennyson or something like that. Have a voluntary defense. James Tennyson, that would be funny, He would fight James Tennyson for a voluntary defense before going up against Teofimo Lopez, man. And Teofimo Lopez said, like, man, nah, man, I ain't fighting in front of no fans, man. I want to have the fans in the seats when I fight. So he's like, I don't want to hear nothing. I want Vasyl Lomachenko ASAP. Let's get it. That's how Teofimo is right now. That he wants to go ahead and get that fight going there. So that's what they have on that, man. Now, the one other thing that I was going to bring up, but I'm like, everybody's talked about it, man. And I'm like, what is it? Only like, 30 seconds or something? And I'm like, I done seen this 30 seconds for like, at least 100 times already. I mean, it's Mike Tyson. He's throwing combinations. And I mean, it's just, him doing him. I mean, that's always been in Mike Tyson. So for me, it's not that much of a surprise as long as he is able to keep himself in shape and all of that. He's been doing that for, a good little while as far as like doing the things with punching and stuff like that, because he had been teaching a couple of MMA fighters to a certain extent. So he's been doing that for a good little while. But now they're like having like rumors of him possibly, fighting in exhibition matches and things like that. So I don't know. I mean, he's there at what, 53 years old or something like that. He's 53 right now. So I mean, hey, if what was it? If Evander Holyfield could have an exhibition match with who, Mitt Romney or somebody, hey, if he could have an exhibition match with Mitt Romney, then I don't know. Maybe Mike Tyson could, get somebody else in the ring out there. I don't know. Bernie Sanders, no, not Bernie Sanders. They wouldn't be able to prove that. Bernie Sanders. Yeah, he had a little confrontation with a punching bag. It ended up well for him. So yeah, we don't want to have Tyson in there with a Bernie Sanders, man. I don't know, man. I don't know. Maybe I'll have him against, I don't know, a Jim Jordan or some other politician that's out there. Who knows? So I mean, he's. But my thing with Mike Tyson is, I mean, he's kind of like good right now. As far as I know, he's good. He got like everything set up for him at this particular point of his life. So I mean, he could basically kind of like do whatever he wants. But as far as like doing the exhibition match or something like that, and if he could do it in order to like raise money, that's more power to him. Maybe that goes into the whole thing that we were talking about the other day, as far as like live content. Even though it's like an exhibition fight, it's still Mike Tyson. So like you said, he's one of the two most captivating heavyweight fighters of all time, next to Muhammad Ali. So if you had Mike Tyson on the TV doing something, in the ring, man, that you'll have some eyes watching. Not in an exhibition match? I don't know about that, man.
Nah. Tyson versus Wilder.
For reals?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, well.
Tyson versus
Wilder. Well.
Please, I would have Joseph. I'm already set my thing. I definitely want to hear your opinion, man.
Because here's the thing. Do you remember the Tyson on his pod where he was talking to Shane Leonard? And there was this real emotional clip from there where Tyson was talking about how he's not that guy anymore. He misses that guy because he felt like a savage, but now he feels like a bitch. I don't think it's any coincidence that after he says that, he's all of a sudden constantly coming back to the sport. He's getting himself back in shape. He's starting to videos out there. He released on his social media when Deontay Wilder said that he could knock out Mike Tyson.
Right.
Tyson responded to that recently. He said, "Oh, really? I think he is planning to see for one last fight. And honestly, I'll be there for it. I think that this should happen. And not for the simple fact that I want to see Deontay Wilder knock his ass out, which is going to happen in this fight. I just want to put that on record. Deontay Wilder will knock his ass out if they do fight. But I want to see it for the simple fact that I think that this fight can generate a ton of revenue. And I think that this fight could be what puts boxing back in the mainstream. And it'll be a huge payday for Tyson, who we know what happened with him in his career financially with Don King.
Right.
We know he lost $300 million, basically. So this would be a huge payday for one of our heroes growing up, one of the guys who
shouldn't expect no different answer than what you just gave. I should already know what you're going to say. You are truly a fan of the Deontay Bob Squad fan club. That's a given answer. But you're right though. For one, the fight with Wilder and Tyson, that would generate a ton of revenue. and first thing first, I tell you what, when Don King saw the video of Tyson training recently, what do you think he thought? I want a piece of action. I want to get back in the game. That's
at that point, if you still have some paperwork on Tyson.
Yeah, he's trying to find out if he's trying to dig up that contract to see if he still has rights.
Back in the game, you got to keep back at the table, but really, it's like if that was happening, that fight would definitely generate a ton of pay-per-view money. Definitely would end up in Las Vegas. We know that. That would be a phenomenal story of redemption and comeback. For him to come back and fight at 54 years old against Deontay Wilder. And what's kind of funny, he say for example that Fury does go and fight Joshua, and Wilder steps out money, same thing for Puya, right? And Wilder could actually do something different, do the same thing that Fury did to him. Step away from that and make his own pay-per-view event with Tyson. Same thing that Fury did to him. But really, we all know Tyson's a great boxer. But at this point, we've never seen somebody come back at this type of age. But at the same time, boxing is great within Tyson. It's in this day and age. He's been doing it so long, as we saw in that video clip, man. Albeit it's just one video clip, and we know that it's just not no one throwing punches back at you. Mm-hmm. But once again, boxing is a part of Tyson as much as Tyson is a part of boxing. We know that. But Wilder ain't knocking no Tyson out. Matt, you must still be on April 20th on Kush Day.
420. Now, my thing, man. I mean, here it is. You know, Tyson's Twitter page, and he posts the video up. It's 5 seconds, right? Here it is about 2 days later, 8.5 million views. That tells you.
Oh my God.
That tells you, and the amount of, let me see. Almost 30,000 retweets, and some of the most known people around have retweeted this particular video. So, I mean, it won't even take a week for that thing to be 10 million views. But to go into, the possibility of him fighting Deontay Wilder, to kind of set that potential fight up. Now, what was it? A couple of weeks ago, Deontay Wilder was on the PBC podcast. And he said that on the podcast, in the second fight between him and Tyson Fury, that he injured his right arm. And so with that being said, he had surgery on that arm, and he can't really do full contact training with that arm until the end of May. So with that being said, he would have to go from scratch starting in June. You have June, July, August. And if they're supposed to plan for this fight to happen on October 3rd, that means he would have to be in training in August when he's just getting things back together for, his right arm. Now, if he's not necessarily fully ready for that, then they can't have that fight on October 3rd. And then on top of that, you have Bob Arum saying that, oh man, a fight of this magnitude, you have Fury Wilder 3. It has to be in an arena with all the fans there. We just can't have it in a closed circuit place where nobody is able to attend the event. We're not just going to have it like that. It's that simple. So, with that being said, they could potentially have Fury versus Joshua on one side, and then, whether it's exhibition or not, Mike Tyson, Deontay Wilder in Las Vegas, or, it's got to be in Las Vegas. So, and you would just have Mike Tyson back. Like, imagine if they made it the instant they would make it official, it would say Mike Tyson is back. Like, that's all they have to say. Mike Tyson is back. And it's a wrap. It's basically a wrap. So if you could have that, and like you said, Matt, give Mike Tyson the right amount of money, you give Deontay Wilder the right amount of money, then it's, it would be on like popcorn with that. So, and then to top it all off, I've said this in a YouTube video that I posted earlier today. I said, with Deontay Wilder being in rehab over in his home, I'm like, folks were talking about, George Foreman reaching out to him as far as like his third fight between him and Tyson Fury, but George Foreman ain't the only one. Evander Holyfield may have stopped by to talk with Deontay Wilder as well. And with that, you might have something to where if he has Evander Holyfield under his wing, like Wilder said in the podcast, he said that he was going to add a couple more people on his team and kind of weed out a couple of others that have been with them to kind of get rid of the snakes, as he says. So maybe if he has Evander Holyfield there with him, he may be able to work on a little bit more with his defense and like learning how to catch punches, because that's what Evander Holyfield did in his day very well. He timed his opponent's punches and he was catching a lot of their punches too. So if he could work on that and come up with counters off of that, then that could really show vast improvement with Deontay Wilder. And so if that does happen, I would like to see how that turns out for Wilder in a potential or in a rematch against Tyson Fury there, because there's been, a couple of instances where Deontay Wilder has been able to get to Tyson Fury as long as he's been able to be a little bit more confident in other punches that he throws, not just the right hand, but the left hook and his left jab. So if he's able to work on that a little bit more and have more confidence in that, then we may see, a good amount of improvement from Deontay Wilder in that case.
Yeah, that's true. I wonder why Deontay Wilder doesn't throw a lead right anymore. Like, I think what Deontay Wilder should be doing right now is just soaking in all the knowledge he can get from all the OGs. He needs to continue to reach out to Foreman, Holyfield. He needs to reach out to Floyd. Let's just get something in the arsenal other than the left hook right hand combination. He got to get something in there.
Well,
question for you. Well, great point, real quick. So we saw Fury just went back to Pump Gym and got I forgot the guy's name that trained the black guy from
Sugar Hill Stewart.
Right. And was able to make an adjustment in the last fight. So if Fury can do that, why can't Wilder do that? I mean, at this point, this guy has 40, 41, 42 fights, whatever it is. And on top of that, you've been in training camps, sparring sessions, training camps over the years. At that point, even if you don't like boxing, being that you've been in boxing all that time, at some point you have to learn. You have to learn. Your body has to adjust, and stuff has to click in your mind because you do this for a living. You do this for a living, and and that's what we focus so much about Wilder. And I'm not a Wilder hater. It's because if you guys go back a few years on the show, I said myself that I want Wilder to be everything that he wants to be in the sport, but because of the lack of the boxing ability that we see, the natural boxing ability, it has hindered him time and time again until we got to this point where we are right now. But it's like I said, after being in boxing so long, it's like you guys are in your daily profession. You guys have been doing your job so long. It's like clockwork. It's like clockwork, and things like this click in your head to know to do things naturally and to progress and to get better. But we haven't seen that yet, and that's what's so frustrating. Even like you said, you hope that he's soaking in knowledge from all these other people that's been in boxing for a long time, your performers, people like that. But he's been in there. He's already got that. So I'm not trying to be mean to the dude, but I think he always will be. He is what he is. Heavy right-handed boxer. We know that with little to no boxing ability. It is what it is.
You don't think JD has impact on what you feel like is a lack of development with Wilder? You don't think maybe if they let another guy get in there with a more versatile training arsenal, that's not going to help Deontay Wilder, who's a natural athlete?
I am optimistic. I'm a very optimistic person, but like I said, with so much experience that he's had, we still get the same thing. Which at one point, what's the potential catch? At one point, does he throw that boom, pop and jab? At one point, does he keeps this height? Boom, boom, stick, boom, boom, right away. When does he win? When am I going to see it?
Well, in his defense, he did get punched in the back of the head in his last fight, but we're not going to get into that.
Well, I mean, my thing is, and it keeps getting brought up in reference to Deontay Wilder, is that if he was really under the tutelage of Mark Breland, then we may have seen or may be able to see what Deontay Wilder could do as a 6'7" guy around 220, 225 there with power and utilize, that reach and that power behind the right hand. So the thing is like, yeah, you do have a right hand, but you got to find other ways to catch, people with more experience with their right hand. You can't just, go against guys that are much shorter than you or don't have the reach to where you could use that reach in order to keep them at bay with your left hand or to par away at their guard with your left hand and then come down the pipe with the right. Now, you can't necessarily do that against guys that are your height or taller that have that reach. So, and you've seen in that second fight, in that second fight early, that he was throwing that right hand, but he threw it at full extension. So he didn't necessarily get the full power that he wanted to from his legs to his torso up to throw that right hand. So when it did touch Tyson Fury, it didn't really affect him as much as, people would think it would. So he has to work on setting up traps for that right hand, in this preparation time before he has the third fight with Tyson Fury, or maybe potentially a fight with Mike Tyson. But it's something that remains to be seen. We'll see what happens here over the next 4 to 8 weeks, how his progression goes as his right arm gets fully healed. So you do have that. That is pretty much what I wanted to talk about in this particular episode of the Boxing Source Radio Show. Next week, I'm going to plan to have another guest on, Steve Nelson. They're from Nebraska. So we're planning on having him on the show next week. And then also, I want to see if I can have like a 5th anniversary style show as part of that. It's been 5 years since I've started the Boxing Source Radio Show. So I'm going to have like a period of reflection as to, what I've been doing over those 5 years. So be on the lookout for that there. So be sure to catch that show live 7:30 p.m. Eastern Time. Blog Talk Radio, or catch the podcast on Anchor.fm or iTunes or Google Podcasts and whatnot. And like I say, at the end of every show, folks, the point of boxing is to hit and not get hit, not to stand and trade. On that note, folks, I'm out. Have a good evening, everybody.